In this video, we are going to be solving problems involving joint variation. Joint variation is very similar to direct variation. You just got more pieces kind of thrown into this. So it typically looks something like this, that you'll see the word that things vary jointly versus varying directly. If they vary jointly, then you are going to have still this constant of variation, but then you might have multiple pieces multiplied together after it. Could be divided, could be all sorts of different situations. So that's kind of the only difference, is you'll have multiple pieces, so it's a lot harder to do kind of mentally, and you definitely can't do it proportionally. Okay, so this is going to be your setup. So it says if we're going to find W if W varies jointly as X and Y. So that tells us exactly what our equation is. So it says if W varies jointly, so it's W is equal to, and if it's jointly, it's going to be some sort of a constant, jointly as X and Y. So that just means that you're going to be multiplying by X, multiplying by Y. Okay. Once you have your equation set up, they give you some values. That is not meant to be there. So they give you an X is 14. They give you a Y. So they give you a sample, basically. So if they give you a sample, and they tell you, well, this is a little bit different. They give you an X, they give you a Y, and they also tell you what the constant of variation is. They really just tell you everything. So we're trying to figure out what W then is. So if your constant is 0.5, and in this situation, your X is 14, and your Y is 6, wonderful news is they gave you everything you needed to find W. So if you throw that all into the calculator, you got half of 14 is 7. 7 times 6 is 42. And you're done. All right, a little bit same thing, just a little bit more, it's a word problem, but basically it's the same thing, because right away, if we're looking for some words, it's supposed to be an and. So simple interest for an account is jointly proportional. Now proportional and variation, like proportional doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to be able to just jump into setting up a proportion, because we're going to have too many pieces in here because of the word jointly. Okay, so that it is jointly proportional to the time and principal. Okay, so I'm going to use T for time. I'm going to use P for principal. And then I'm going to have a K involved in it. And I have interest. So interest is equal to some constant of variation times time times principal. Okay, now this is exactly the same equation as a normal simple interest, and this constant actually is your interest rate. Okay, so, but the way they're trying to write it out, and you'll see that it says if the quarterly interest, that's important, for an account balance of 7,000, so we have a principal of 7,000 is, so that's the amount of interest that we accrued, 87.50. Okay. Let's see, find the interest on a balance of 8,500 for 9 months. So it says that it's quarterly. That is actually your time of 1/4 of a year. Okay. So if we take these values and plug it into what we know, figure out, solve for what we don't know, and then we're going to use that information to kind of start the process over. Our K is not going to change, but our amount changes and our time changes. Okay, so let's just kind of go through that. So it tells us the interest. We earned $87.50. We don't know this constant of variation, which you're going to see that it's going to be our rate. Our time was 0.25. And our principal was $7,000. Initial amount. Okay, so if we multiply this together, 1/4 of 7,000 is 1,750. Okay, equals our 87.50. Okay, so if I throw that in the calculator, it's what I get. And then I want to divide the 1750 over to the other side so I can solve for K. And then we divide that in the calculator and we get 0.05. Well, that is 5%. So our constant of variation is really just a rate. So K is a rate in this type of problem. Okay, 5% interest is what we're earning. All right, so we have K. Great. We're going to go back to the original thing. Okay, and it says find the interest, so we don't know. Our K equals 0.05. Our time is going to be 9 months, so it's not going to be 9 because everything is kind of in relation to a year. So it's 9/12 of a year. So our time is 9/12, which is 0.75, 3/4 of a year. And then our initial amount, our principal, is $8,500. Okay, so our interest is going to be our K, which is 0.05. We're earning 5% for 3/4 of a year. Oops. So 5. And then our principal was $8,500. All right, and we throw that into the calculator, multiply that out, we will get an interest of $318.75 if we throw that into the calculator. Okay, so that one was a two-step. It gave you enough information, but it didn't give everything, which meant you were missing the K, this constant of variation, aka a rate in this problem. And then once you find your rate, the rate's the rate. So then we can throw all sorts of different time and money kind of situations at you. And then we're using that constant rate over and over again, mixing up these values and just kind of see what it all turns out to be. All right, so that was joint variation.